purchasing power, increasing your purchasing power. So something that we're running to into this market is buyers not having enough purchasing power. It's either they have too much debt, they don't have enough income, um, a combination of both, right? So, a solution to this is multi generational home purchasing. Well, what do I mean by that? Um, at my age, I'm considered the sandwich generation. Sandwich generation is I took care of my parents, my family, and my kids, right? So you can purchase a home with your parents. You can, if you're the parent, you can purchase the home with your kids. Um, so I'll expound on that. We have a ton of home buyers in the market. There's not enough inventory for one, right? But two, you don't qualify for enough to purchase. So what is the solution? The solution is teaming up with the family member and purchasing with them, right? What I mean, that means, let's say your parents are looking to purchase in the same area as you, and you are qualified for 250. They're qualified for 235. At that point, you could potentially put together your purchasing power and be able to purchase a house large enough to take care of you, take care of them. The parents live in the basement. Maybe there's an ADU, accessible dwelling unit, that they can live in the back. Same thing with your kids. So those are options on how to potentially increase your purchasing power. So how does that work, Kevin? How does that work? We're looking at how much money do you guys bring in collectively? How much money do you have going out collectively? So that's what we are looking at. So I've mentioned this to people, and they said, "Oh no, I don't want to do that." Why not? It may not be forever, right? It could be just to get you into a home. Think about it. I have a client where she pays about $1,000 a month in rent. Her two sons, who live separately, pay $1,500 a month each in rent. That's $3,500 of rent. Um, that's $3,500 in rent that they're paying. They said, "Hey, Kevin, we want to try to purchase together because my son's working, my other son's working, I'm at home, and then when we're off of work, we're together." There's a large they're going they can purchase a large enough house with a $3,500 a month budget to where each one of them individually could have their own space and not bother each other, right? So that's a way to increase purchasing power. I know some people don't want to hear it. However, that is a great way to purchase. Um, Another way to increase purchasing power is, if, let's say, for instance, you have your, some people have cars in their name that don't belong to them. It could belong to their kids, it could belong to their parents, it could belong to a boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever the situation is, even husband and wife. Why don't you see if that person, even though in the beginning they couldn't be on the car alone, maybe now, if you're on it jointly, you've been making payments on time, and now their credit's in a little better situation. See if they can refinance out of that loan, or you can refinance out of that loan, and it's still it just be in their name. Example, if you have a two $500 car payments and one doesn't belong to you, and that $500 car payment now is no longer on your credit, that now allows for you to have an additional $500 of purchasing power on purchasing a home. That's great. Let's go back to the multi-generational, right? Let's say that it's your kid's car and you purchase with them. That debt only gets counted once, which is against one of you, because it's only going to be paid out one time. So increasing your purchasing power allows for them to now be on the loan, and that $500 no longer affects you the way that it would if you were on it by yourself. If you are joining the live now, we are talking about how to increase purchasing power. Also, purchasing with multi-generational families. So in the beginning, I talked about the sandwich generation: parents, kids, and of course the grandkids. Typically, the grandkids, the kids are taken care of, and you buying a home with your parents. This is a solution of how you can increase your purchasing power, as well as, being able to purchase, period. I've seen people who didn't qualify for anything because their debt to income ratio was too much. They didn't really have enough funds to buy or pay anything down. But when they collectively joined with their parents or their siblings, even their in-laws, right? Then you have more purchasing power. A lot of people don't want to hear this because they want their own space, but with them not having the ability to two things. If you don't have the ability to show more income that you can show on paper, um, you're going to be, or pay things down, you're going to be stuck purchasing in that same purchasing power, right? If you don't have the ability to um, buy at all, and your renting just doesn't make sense, then collaborating with family members, and again, it doesn't have to be for life. It can be until you get your situation right. It could be until you pay off your cars. It can be until your student loan debt is forgiven if you're in the public loan forgiveness program. It can be until your spouse has the ability to come on the loan with you, because if you're married, that doesn't necessarily mean that both of you qualify for a mortgage. You may just need to be on the loan with your parents, or your parents may just need to be on the loan with you long enough until your husband or your wife can qualify to be on the mortgage. Sometimes you have to, a way to qualify for more is to get rid of some of your debt. I actually had a client. He actually sold one of his cars so that he could qualify for more. It was more important to him to put his family in a home instead of having an extra car to say that you have 3 cars. So these are ways to increase your purchasing power. There's other basic ways to increase purchasing power: paying down debt. When I say paying down debt, seeing what you can pay down to increase. So let's say you have 10 credit cards, right? And you pay down 5 of them, and collectively 5 of them equals $500. That's $500 more dollars of income you qualify for. $500 more dollars of home that you have the ability to qualify for. Let's say you don't have the ability to show enough income, but you have a second job. Take the money from the second job and utilize that to do what it's really supposed to do: pay down debt and try to save, right? Now, there are some cons to doing this, right? I just want to make sure we understand see the whole picture. The con to doing this is, if you're looking to utilize a down payment assistance program, it may put you out of being able to qualify because you may be over income. So I will say that because I can't get down payment assistance, I wouldn't let that deter me from being able to purchase a home. Now, there are some down payment assistance that are available that do not consider household income, and there's no income limits or housing limits. So there's ways that you can get into a home. Don't allow for the fact that you don't want to live with your parents, or your parents don't want to live with you, or that you don't qualify for a down payment assistance program. Don't let that deter you from the ultimate goal of home ownership. Your parents may be in a position to help you with purchasing the home, or your kids may be in a position to be able to help you with a home to be able to qualify for more. These are ways that allow for you to create more purchasing power. It allows for you to actually become a homeowner. Don't let your pride stand in the way of you being a homeowner. Because if you continue to think that over time you'll be able to pay down debt, or over time you'll be able to save more money, and you can't, then you're going to be stuck in the same spot. And one thing that's given, typically rents go up every year, no matter what part of the country you're in, whether it's 5%, 10%, $50, rent is going to continue to increase. So you want to make sure that in order to increase your purchasing power, you see if you can go on with family. And you can, there's in certain parts of the country, there are so many ways that you can purchase a home and have your own space. One thing is buying multifamily. If you buy a multifamily home with your family members, not only do you have your own living space living in one unit, they could have their own living space. So let's say you find a fourplex. That means 4 units. You can live in one side, your family members or parents can live in the other side, or kids can live in the other side, and you guys can rent out the other 2 units. And that helps you 2 things. That helps you pay less for your mortgage, because the other 2 units, the rent should be contributing to helping you pay. And then it also allows for you to potentially start investing, meaning you don't have to stay in that unit forever. You guys can do that as a means to get you into a home. And then you can also, once you get into the home, if you move out after 1 year, in that time frame, the goal is to try to save money so you can have that 3 to 5% that now you can move into another home that you can afford, because you have that rental income coming in that you can show. And you also have more of a down payment. So there are steps to creating home ownership, increasing your purchasing power. We just have to be able to, one, you need to get with a lender who's knowledgeable and can help you think outside the box and give you these options. And then you have to be willing to think outside the box and look at these options. Now, and I get it. In certain parts of the country, there are not many multifamily units, and I get it. So then there may be other ways. If you are going to get a second job, that second job cannot help you qualify because you're getting new income, whether it's the same field, same company, none of that matters. When you have 2 positions, 2 jobs, you need to be working those 2 jobs for 2 years consecutively at the same place. Okay? So the second job doesn't help you qualify for more, but it can help you pay down debt. And that's what it is, paying down your debt. If you have student loans and student loans is an issue, get on a student loan or income-based repayment plan. I know some people who have a ton of student loan debt, and because they're on the public service loan forgiveness program, they have a 0 payment. However, if you go FHA financing, that zero payment does not fly with FHA, Fannie Mae, or Freddie Mac. Now, if you have the ability to go conventional financing will allow for you to use a zero payment if you go with Fannie Mae as the backer. If it's Freddie Mac, that is a totally different story. Okay. Again, we're talking about increasing your purchasing power. We talked about second jobs, paying down debt. We talked about taking your purchasing power and combine it with another family member or family members to be able to qualify for more. So there's a ton of different options. We just have to be willing to do it, and we have to be open to doing it. So I'm going to take some questions. Do me a favor, guys. If you're new to this channel or watching the replay, if you have questions, you can put your questions down below. If you want to schedule a consultation with myself and my team, the links will be down below as well. And if you're new to the channel, hit subscribe and it'll notify you when I am going live. How would you get out of that situation? Would you have to sell the property in order to be released from that separately? That's a great question. Not necessarily. So if that is a game plan for you to initially get into a home, what we can do is put together a game plan on having the other person in position to be able to refinance and get your name off so you can buy another property, or for you to, the money that you're saving, to be able to pay down your debts and to be able to stay on that property, right? Stay on that property, have the person who is on there make 12 payments on time out of their account. And then we don't have to necessarily count that debt against you. And then that will allow for you to be able to purchase another home. Somebody said, how can you do it? I did it this year. I had a client who had co-signed on a loan, home loan, and he was able to qualify for another home because we could show that the payments did not come out of his bank account. So 12 consecutive payments from the other person's bank account. And then in 12 months, you have the record showing, hey, I'm not paying this mortgage, and then you can buy another property. So there's ways out of it, or the person could just refinance out if they have the ability to. Getting in it is one thing. Having a strategy is it has to be put in play. So everybody has to be on the same page in terms of getting out of it. Or if you guys have accomplished the goal, let's say that you purchased a home collectively, and over, let's say you stayed in it for 3 years and now you have equity in that property, you guys could sell the home. Now they have a larger down payment. You have a larger down payment from the proceeds of the house, and then you can go buy something separately. But you have to be diligent and not taking on any more debt or a ton more debt while you're in that home in order to execute the strategy. Because the problem that I see is once people get a house, they get the car, they take on more debt, they run up the credit cards. You have to be diligent in keeping your debt down so that you can move on to the next step, or you're going to be stuck in that house with that person. So hopefully that answered your question. All right, Nubian G. Are there some grants available in the state of Georgia that will assist with you to purchase a home without having to pay that money back? Yes and no. So you have Georgia Dream, which is a down payment assistance program. It has a silent second, meaning you don't pay any interest on it. It stays there. The only time you pay it back is if you sell the home or refinance. So there's no second. It's a second mortgage as a second lien, so that if you do sell or you refinance, they get their money back without any interest. If they gave you $10,000 and you sell or refinance, they're just paid their $10,000 back. Chenoa and Click and Close are two down payment assistance programs that after you've lived in a home either 3 or 5 years, Click and Close is 5, Chenoa is 3, those loans can be forgiven as long as you live in the house for 3 years or 5 years and you've made on-time payments for 36 months for Chenoa and Click and Close 120 months, excuse me, not 120 months, 60 months. Those are forgiven and you don't have to pay them back. They do have payable options, but those are the repayable options. There are not a lot of grants available, like that you just don't pay the funds back. There's some attachment to it. One that comes to mind that is a potential grant is DeKalb County grant. You have to live in DeKalb County. It's called We DeKalb. It's a down payment assistance program that they grant you the funds after you've lived in the house. You can refinance in 7 months and you don't have to pay back. So that's one of the few grant programs that I know. You've got Atlanta Housing Authority, which is funds, but you got to stay in the house for 10 years. You got Invest Atlanta, which you typically have to stay in the house for 10 years. You got Fulton County Down Payment Assistance Program. Again, you got to stay in the house between 5 to 10 years. So free grants and free money is tough. And I'm going to tell you why. Because they don't have, if they give away all of their money, there's no way for them to continue to fund the program. So there has to be something to it. There also has to be something to it because everyone isn't honest, right? So what we saw in Georgia during the COVID pandemic, where people say they were moving to Georgia, participating in the down payment assistance programs, and then never moving into the house. So they've used the down payment assistance program, never moved into the house. Now it's an investment property to them, and it's wasting funds for other people. So what some of the down payment assistance programs did was they decided, hey, now since we're having this issue, you need to show at least 6 months residency in the state of Georgia before we allow for you to participate in our program. So that helped put it to a halt. That's interesting. Thanks again. It's good to have no debt, more purchasing power, correct? Yeah. No monthly debt that allows for you to purchase. The less debt you have, the better you off are. Again, I've said this before. I've helped people who make $50,000 a year purchase, and then it's people who couldn't get approved who made $150,000 because they were leveraged, too much debt, ton of student loan debt, credit card debt, car payments, just so much debt that they make the money, but they spend it and it's taken and it's accounted for. So those are some things to be mindful of. Purchasing power in this market is paying $45K over asking, waiving inspections, paying sellers, transfer tax, and more. Not necessarily in this market. Maybe a year and a half ago. Positioning yourself properly, and in this market, it takes money. Like you're going to have money. You need to have money for either down payment and closing costs. You need to have money available for inspections. You need to have money for appraisals, incidental. It's just taking money. Like the days of buying, 2,000 square foot home for $150,000 that doesn't need any work on an acre lot are gone. I doubt if we ever see those again. Or do you have to offer $45,000 over asking and waive inspections and all that? I wouldn't, because it's not that type of market. You just have to position yourself um, to make yourself the best offer. And if it's not that property, if you're not the best offer of that property, that's fine, right? Um, what people do is they see a house, let's say for 350, and to them they say, okay, I want to offer 340, and I want to ask the seller for $10,000 in closing cost assistance. So in the seller's mind, they're giving you $20,000. The $10,000 coming off of the 350. Now, whether the house is worth 350 or not, that's a different story. Appraisal would have to tell the story. But then you want $10,000 in closing cost assistance. That $10,000 from closing cost assistance typically is going to come from their proceeds. So if they were due back $50,000 and they give you 10, now they're walking away with 40. And if they were looking for 60 and you drop the price 10 and ask for additional 10, to them, you're getting a third of what they were going to make. So you have to put yourself in the seller's position as well. Like, if I want to make a decent offer, I'm going to say, okay, instead of asking them for $10,000 and then taking 10,000 off the price, just give them the 350 and ask for 10,000 and see what they say. The payment between 350 and 340 is no more than an additional $100 a month. An additional $100 a month, in order for you to recoup that $10,000, it would only take 100 months. You see what I'm saying? So you have to look at yourself from the seller standpoint, and then don't let it be where they've already dropped the price, let's say 10,000. You come in 10,000 lower and you're asking for 10,000. In their mind, I'm losing $30,000. So when you're putting in an offer, you just need to make sure that you have a great lender who reaches out to the seller and lets them know what due diligence you've done, that they've done for you. You also need to make sure that your realtor has the ability to negotiate or to make it a win-win. A lot of times I see agents potentially lose the deal for the buyer. I'm going to say it again. Sometimes the agents lose the deal for the buyer. And when you're purchasing, no one's happy unless the buyer and the seller come to an agreement. So going in negotiating like you're in court and you're battling back and forth doesn't help the buyer or the seller. Seeing what the seller needs, seeing what the buyers want, and seeing how you can come to a common ground and meet is the best way to have a satisfied and a good transaction. That's the way to make the buyer happy. That's the way to make the seller happy. It's a give and take. It's you know what I mean? I got most of what I wanted, you got what you wanted, because at the end of the day, we both need to move on. The seller is selling the house for a reason. So he, she, or they are potentially looking to get to their next house. So are they going to let $5,000 stop them from moving on to their next phase? And are you going to let $5,000 stop you from having to rent when you're no longer in that position anymore? Because if this deal doesn't go through and you've already given your rental notice, now you either have to find another place to rent for a year, or pay extra, or live with somebody else. So you have to be willing to put forth a good effort. And then you just, sometimes as a buyer, you just have to put yourself in the seller's shoes and say, does this offer really make sense? Wendy said, I worked 1 year in 2019 and 2020, started working again in the beginning of 2022 to present job. Could I get pre-approved for a mortgage knowing I had 19 months of consecutive work right now? Yes, Wendy. What we need to do is make sure we can establish a 24-month work history. So you've had a gap, but you've been back to work for 19 months, which is great. Prior to that gap, if we can get an additional 6 months of work history, that's 24 months of work history over time in your life. We can get you pre-approved as long as the other things line up and you qualify. It says that's the current purchasing power in my market. Offers are coming in with 24 offers for one home. We've put in several offers, and this is the competition. Oh, in Philly. Okay, it's different parts of the market. I know an agent who put in an offer. He said he was 1 in 46. If you're in the suburb of Philly, hey, maybe try sliding down to Delaware and seeing if you can get in there. It depends on your commute to work, but each market is different. But I would definitely try to see how we can make our offer at the top. And again, we're in a market, all of us in the country, where there's lack of inventory. Builders can't build fast enough. Rehabbers can't rehab fast enough. Um, there's a housing shortage of 6.5 million. So again, that's where multi-generational purchasing is an alternative. If you're looking to buy and your parents are looking to buy, and in Philly, there's multi-units. I know there are. Why not try to buy multi-units to get yourself in, and then later on you can exit. You'll have more money. Um, you can save more money, and that gets you out of renting, and then you can move on to the next phase when a year, 2 years. It just all depends. That's just an option. Again, guys, if you have any questions, drop them down. In the comments below. Drop them in the chat. If you're just watching the live or you're just getting on the live, we're talking about how to increase your purchasing power. My main thing would be multi-generational. If multiple people in your family are looking to purchase, if you have a second job and it doesn't qualify, buckling down on your budget and working on paying down some of your debt so you can qualify. And then we also went over, if you're the person in the family, typically with the best credit and the best job, and that you have multiple cars and they don't belong to you, or you don't make payments on it, it's a way to get rid of them. Either have the other person refinance or prove that you haven't made payments out of your account or on that account for 12 months, and we don't have to show that as a payment towards you. Antonio, as a lender, what are the major differences between buying a house versus the subprime days? The biggest thing is in the subprime days, people really probably couldn't afford those houses. They had a no doc loan, stated income. Stated income is, let's say I live in Georgia and I am a CNA. And in Georgia, let's say a CNA was making $12 an hour. Well, they could state the income saying, well, CNA in New York makes $25 an hour. So they could state that income, provide the proper documentation, and then qualify that person based off of that. That's just one step. That's just one thing that happened. The other thing is with the stated income loans, they could do low credit scores and no money down. So you had an 80-20 loan. So you had a first and second, you had a low credit score, and your income was stated. All the wrong reasons. Like, you should not have been in that house. You shouldn't, because you don't make $25 an hour. You have no money vested into it. You're not used to paying a mortgage, so you're paying a first and a second. That was the biggest difference, is the loans. They were just getting people loans and making sure they got in them, not thinking of the long-term effects of that person's credit being ruined or the person just not paying. Again, guys, if you are just joining the live, do me a huge favor. Hit the notification button, the subscribe button, so you get notified when that bell rings. That means I'm online. I typically try to go live on Thursdays at 7. It's the summertime, and lately it's been kind of sporadic. And then sometimes I go live on Mondays, but it will notify you as to when we go live. Again, we're talking about purchasing power, how to increase our purchasing power, tactics on how to get into home ownership, being creative with getting into home ownership, as well as being open-minded to home ownership. I am going to tell you tactics. It's not a play. It's not a hack. It's just facts on how we can get into home ownership. Something that we do need to know is that a lot of people are also waiting for rates to go down. And I'm going to say it till I'm blue in the face. If rates go down, housing inventory isn't going up, but competition will. So then what happens is housing prices skyrocket. You got a lower rate, you can qualify for more, but then we go back to that scenario that mom of four is saying is in Philadelphia, suburbs of Philly, multiple offer situations, asking, waiving inspections, waiving finance contingencies, paying over asking price. That's the market we're going to be in because it's not going to create more houses. I wish we could figure out how to get more housing. However, right now we're stuck with what we have. Builders can't build fast enough. They're not building a ton of extra homes in fear of being stuck with homes in case something happens in the market. So we gotta, be creative again. If you buy a 4 unit, if you're buying with family and you're in an area that has 4 units, buy a 4 unit. You live in one, the other family members live in the other. Rent out the 2 units that are left, and then that'll help you guys save money. You have to be smart in that situation. Somebody asked, well, what's the way out? You got to be smart. You can't spend extra because you're now paying less for a mortgage and somebody's paying rent. And the other key is you have to remember you need to save some of that money that they're paying because you're now a landlord. And with being a landlord come expenses. If you hire a property manager, that's typically 10% of the monthly rent, gross rents. And then you also have situations where if you don't hire a landlord and something happens, you have to fix whatever's broke. Toilet stopped up, air conditioner unit not working, heating not working, appliances acting up, plumbing acting up. So it also comes with responsibility. But it's a way to increase your purchasing power because then you can utilize the rent that you have coming in to help, or going to have coming in, help you qualify for more house. I wish there were more multi units in Florida. Yeah, I heard that there are. It depends on what type of part of Florida you're in. I heard that in parts of Jacksonville, there are some multi units for pretty inexpensive. I had a client that was looking in that. A couple clients that were looking in that area. They haven't purchased yet, but they're still working on it. But it just depends on what part of the country you're in. The other big thing with more purchasing power, if you work remotely and you have the ability to move from where you are, move to the next state. If you can find a multifamily unit if you live in Florida and there's multifamilies in Georgia and you work remotely, move to Georgia. If you live in Georgia and there's multifamilies in South Carolina, move to South Carolina. It doesn't even have to be multifamily. If you're in Florida and Georgia is less expensive than Florida, or you're in Pennsylvania and Delaware is less expensive than Pennsylvania or Philadelphia, move to another state if you have the ability to. It's sacrifice, right? In some cases, some people just don't want to move because they don't want to. But because you work remotely and you typically your company's office is out of, you know, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and you can move to Delaware. Two things: if you have to go in once a week, you can commute from Delaware to Pennsylvania once a week. It's not that bad of a drive, depending on which part of Delaware you're in. Or if you don't ever have to go in, you can move to somewhere that's more affordable, and then you can have home ownership. Remember, guys, when you purchase a home, it is a 30-year mortgage, right? That's to help keep the payment down because you're borrowing hundreds of thousands of dollars. However, that doesn't mean you have to stay in that property for 30 years. You can get yourself a game plan, you can sell the property, and you can be out of the property, once you can execute on the game plan. So, Miss Jones, I understand. Like, I know it's not just that easy to move, but in some cases it is. Everybody's situation is different. You can move um, if you work remotely. If there's some people who work remotely who don't have kids, they can move. If you have kids and they're in school or you have family, that's a different story. It's just an option for you. Some people don't know. I got people who they don't care. Like, young lady calls, she wants to move from Colorado to another state that she can afford, and she's taking her kids with her. So no, it's not just that easy to move. It's not just that easy to buy anywhere, even in your state. But it is an option. I'm here providing solutions. I get what you're saying though, but no, it's not just that easy to move. But some people don't even know that that's an option. Multi-unit seem to be in bad neighborhoods. So that's a good segue. So I get that I don't want my kids to grow up in a necessarily bad neighborhood. But then that's the thing. We look at it as a bad neighborhood. Someone else looks at it as an opportunity, and that's where gentrification comes in at. And when other nationalities come in and buy up our neighborhoods, then we're saying, hey, they brought our neighborhood up. You could be the turning point in that neighborhood. But I get what you're saying. Just, look at it as an opportunity. Crime happens all over, good neighborhoods, bad neighborhoods, medium neighborhoods. Um, it just it's just another option, guys, another option to your solution. Hey, if you are just joining this live and you have a question, definitely put it in the comments. I appreciate you guys. I appreciate you guys working together in this and talking to each other in the chat. I love that. I love to see you guys talking with each other, and I love the questions. Keep bringing the questions. Um, keep bringing the questions, and I will continue to answer them. If you're just joining the live, put your comment below. Please do me a huge favor. I have a Facebook group. The link will be below for you to join. We're going to be offering information in the Facebook group. You guys can ask questions when I'm not on live. You can chat amongst yourself about your home buying journey as you go along. There's also going to be times where we're going to have giveaways, theme days. I'm just looking to continue to build a group. The link will be below. For those who you have joined, I appreciate it. For those who you have not yet joined, do your boy a favor and join. I would love to have you in there. If you are, in fact, in the group, why don't you comment and tell me some topics that you want to hear or you want to see? Also, if you have any questions and you don't want to wait for the live, let me know and I will answer it. I get notified when someone comes in the group. So that will allow for me to be able to answer your questions for you. Again, I am here to answer your questions and to help you with home ownership, providing solutions. Um, if you are afraid to ask your question, or if you have a question that you don't want to put out because it's too personal in terms of your current situation, feel free to reach out to me. The links will be below and set up a consultation so you can have a one-on-one consultation with me and get your question answered so we can help you on the path to home ownership. Again, let's get back to the questions. I'm gonna try to get to everybody's questions as I can. Somebody emailed me last week and told me I answered everybody's questions but theirs. So I want to make sure I get to everybody's questions. How much should you have saved up? 10, 15, 20, 30,000. That is a great question. Um, it depends. So let's take a $300,000 house, and let's say you're using FHA financing. On FHA financing, and let's take the scenario of you're not using down payment assistance. Um, on FHA financing, you need to have $10,500 for the actual down payment on a $300,000 house. The closing cost is probably going to be another $10,000 to $15,000. Why is that? Because you have, in the closing costs, you have to pay attorney's fees, you have to pay taxes. Some of you guys are in Florida, especially in Dade County and Miami, taxes are super expensive. Homeowners insurance is a part. You have to pay a year's worth of homeowners insurance. Again, you have prorations, you have discount points that you have to pay. A discount point is 1% of the sales of the loan amount, depending on what your interest rate is. Prime example, the lower your rate is, typically the higher the discount points. The higher the rate is, the lower the discount points. Um, so, to answer your question, as much as possible. It just depends on what you qualify for. Now, what you should do is if you get pre-approved from a lender, once you got the pre-approval, you guys go over everything, request a estimated closing worksheet, which will allow for you to kind of see how much you need, so you know what to save, know what to pull out your 401k. I do want to say this, and this came up today from a consultation. Understand you're going to have some money into the deal. Even if you're doing a no down payment, no, or the seller's paying closing costs, at minimal, you're going to have to put down earnest money deposit, pay for your inspections, and pay for an appraisal. So if you get into a deal where somehow you're blessed and you don't have to put money into it because you got down payment assistance and the seller paid all your closing costs, that's great. But I like to prepare my borrowers to let them know, hey, we're going to need some money into the deal, so continue to save. So just know that you're going to have some money. And if the house doesn't appraise, the first thing that happens is borrowers is the sellers start to take away the closing cost assistance that they were giving you. It says, hey, Kevin, I missed the answer to Wendy's question regarding job length. Can you repeat it? Cool, I got you. So what we look at is a 24-month work history. So in Wendy's case, she worked in 2019 to 2020. She had a job gap, and then she started working in 2022 to present. So she has 19 months of current work history. Even though she had a job gap, because she's been on her job for more than a year, she still qualifies. We just have to go back before that 2-year gap that she had and get the work history from that previous job to give us a collective 24-month work history. So it doesn't have to be 24 months consecutively. We just have to go back and get a 24-month work history. I've had clients who took off because their kids, because they had babies and they want to raise their kids, and they had 5-year gaps. But then once their kids were old enough to go to school or school age, then they went back to work. They had the allotted time on their job, and we just went and got a work history from when they started. I've had where people got out of college, got married, had kids, and didn't work, and we just go back to college being their 2-year period of time. So it's so many different ways to do it, but as long as we can come up with a 24-month work history, it doesn't have to be 2 consecutive years. It can be split up, and as long as you have time back on that job, we can qualify. Thanks, Nubian G, for joining the group. It says, should I pay off my car now and wait purchasing power benefit? It depends on how much you have left on your car. And the other thing is, so if you pay your car off, um, where would the rest of your closing costs and down payment money come from? So like those are other things you could potentially suggest. If you have less than 10 months left on your car, it may not even get included into your debt to income ratio, depending on what that payment is. Should I pay off a collection from 2019? Couple of things. Depends on how much the collection is. And it also depends on if it's affecting your credit. Um, well, paying the collection off, if it affects your credit, is not going to help increase your score. So I would say let a lender take a look, and he or she or I would be able to tell you if it makes sense to pay it off. Sometimes we get clients to pay debts off, but I would have them pay it off at closing. So if there is going to be a score drop, it's after you purchase the home. It says, hey, Kevin, question. If I have land in Florida, can I build a duplex? The bank lend for construction. And that's a great question. Typically, local banks will build new construction multifamily. So if you have land and it is zoned where you can build new construction multifamily, by all means do it. Because again, you don't have to stay there for the rest of your life. You could use that to get into it, stay there for a year, rent out both sides instead of just one, and then move on to your next property. So that would be a great idea to that will be a great idea for you if you have the ability to. My contact information will be below, but I'm also going to put it in the chat. Reach out to me. Let me know who you are, and see if you can schedule a time for us to talk about your situation. I am renting a house. I always wanted to really understand why it's hard to buy a house when so many people make. Buying a home is very rewarding. However, it's not easy for everybody. There's some smooth transactions that I've been through, and I was like, wow, right? And then there's some transactions that you can't sleep at night because everybody does their banking differently. Everybody has different situations. There's some people who have money that they can account for. They get paid under the table. Their taxes are not done right. They've got multiple vehicles. They're married. They can't. The other spouse can't be on the loan, but they carry most of the debt. But the spouse has good income. Um, and then it's just we're scrutinizing everything because we want to make sure we're partnering with somebody that has the ability to pay us back. So you're asking a lender or a mortgage company to lend you $300,000. The most amount of money that you have ever borrowed in your life or looking to borrow in your life. A home is going to be the largest purchase you make in your life. They want to make sure banks don't want properties back. They want the money that comes in from the property. They could care less and they don't want the house. So they want to vet that the person I'm lending this $300,000 to meets all of my guidelines and has the ability to pay me back and has some options, even if something happens with their job. If they get sick and they can no longer work, they bring on more debt. Like they want to vet you and make sure. So it's hard, but sometimes it's easier than renting. Here in Georgia, they want you to make 3 times the amount of the rent. And it's starting to be nationwide. The same thing when I was managing properties in Delaware. They want you to qualify for 3 times the amount of rent. If the rent is $1,500 a month, they want you to make $4,500 a month. $4,500 a month. So that's 3 times the amount of the rent. They also don't want you to have evictions. If you have an eviction, we can potentially get around that when you purchase a home. They don't want you to have any late rent payments. That necessarily doesn't matter when you purchase a home. So it's so many different factors. But just put yourself in our situation as lenders and mortgage companies. If I came to you and asked for $50, you're going to ask me when I'm going to get it back, what you need it for. We're just doing the same thing, except we're putting extra zeros on the back of that $50. Hopefully that answered your question. Thank you. That was a great question, though. I'm glad you asked it. Home ownership is not easy in terms of going through the process because it's a fast-paced situation. So everybody's constantly working, but I will say it is very, very rewarding. I have a 4-year work history gap, so thank you for clarifying. How far back will you go to get that work history? What happens if the company is no longer in business? Whew, that's a good question, Miss KP Bailey. If the company is no longer in business, we'll figure something out. We may have to go further back. Like we'll just keep digging. Like we'll just have to keep digging. I had a client, this is no exaggeration, where we went back to 2013 and that person was buying in like 2021. It was during the pandemic. We had to go back to 2013 to get a work history because some of the places she worked at under the table. She was in college, so she went back to college to get a degree. So it's just we can go back as far as we need to get a work history. There's some people who were in business forever, and we still had to go back. So it just all depends on the person. But the 4-year gap, I think we can get around it. Have you experienced had experience with anyone using the Hometown Heroes home buying program, and have they had success with it? I'm not sure. I haven't participated in the Hometown Home Buyers program. So let me tell you guys, some of these programs that are out there, when advertised and marketed, they're some of the same programs. People just give it different names. Like for instance, here in Georgia, they've got the Heroes program. It's just really Georgia Dream, which is a down payment assistance program that pays $12,500 to first responders, educators, and teachers, all considered heroes, right? If you're a military veteran and you're disabled, they give you $12,500. You already don't have a down payment because typically going to use your VA loan. So it just depends on the name, but I'm not familiar with a specific program that has that name. I've heard of Home for Heroes. Home for Heroes is it's a program where the lender and the realtor forego some of their commission to help give the buyer a credit to purchase a home. So I have heard of that. I've never participated in it. But there could be something that could be a better option. Hopefully that answered your question. It says, thank you. I have the land and want to build a duplex. Also, I need to have money for the down payment. Not necessarily the case. If you own the land, and let's say you own the land outright, the land could potentially be your down payment because the equity from the land and the building put together could allow the land. So what happened is if you're approved by the bank, they're going to take the plans of the home. They're going to take that lot and they're going to package it together. They're going to give it to an appraiser. When they give it to the appraiser is going to put a value on the duplex and a value on the land. If you own the land free and clear and they give you a value of $50,000 and then the home is 300, then and it's 350 to combine, you can have that $50,000 as your down payment. So you're not bringing money as a down payment. You will need closing costs, but that land could be considered your down payment. If you owe a mortgage on it and it appraises for more than what the mortgage is on it, those additional funds could still be considered your down payment. So you don't necessarily always have to have a down payment. Hey guys, I'm gonna take a couple more questions. It's a good question. Is it better to use a credit union versus a bank? Oops, I'm sorry. Um, Depends on the bank and credit union. Credit unions and banks. Credit unions offer good rates. Banks offer decent rates as well. The problem with the two is they're very conservative. See, a bank's job and a credit union's job is to bring in deposits. They offer loans to people because it's a part of their community service, right? Um, However, they are more conservative than a mortgage lender. If you're going to shop, I would look at a bank and look at a credit union and see what they offer. Some banks own community, have community specific programs that they'll offer to you, or in-house down payment assistance programs that they offer to you. Some credit unions do the same thing. If you're shopping, I would just look at them and compare apples to apples and oranges to oranges, because the credit union's program may be better for you, or the bank's program may be better for you. But both of them have different options. But the biggest thing between the two is they're both conservative on their lending. So, and then the other thing is they don't offer all. So, like some credit unions don't offer FHA. Some banks and credit unions don't offer VA loans. So it just depends on the type of loan in the credit union and bank that you're looking at. That's what doesn't make sense though. If I can prove I make 3 times the rent and never been late, why is it so much harder to get a home loan? So we look at what comes in on a monthly basis. If you bring in, let's say you bring in $5,000 a month on a monthly basis, and you're doing conventional financing. The max on conventional financing for your current debt and your housing debt is 49.9%. So let's say 50%. So what you're currently paying out and what your mortgage is going to be can exceed $2,500, because they don't factor in car insurance, they don't factor in utilities, they don't factor in childcare. So they have to leave some sort of buffer in order to see that you have money left over after you pay your mortgage or pay your other debts, right? That's why. So each person is in a different spot. You have some people who have good income, they got high debt, The person may have a tax bill that they owe, so back taxes. He or she may have child support, alimony, spousal support. It's so many different factors. At the end of the day, the bank doesn't want to lend to someone who can't afford to pay. There's been situations where I thought a borrower was a good borrower, but we just couldn't get an approval. They just didn't like the mix of the person's credit and assets, and debt to income ratio. So it just depends, and then, the level of expertise from your lender matters, because if they don't have the ability to think outside the box or give you a game plan, that's not advantageous to you. Um, I've had situations where all the buyer had to do was pay down their credit cards, and the score went up. They didn't change anything else. They had the down payment, they had the closing costs. They want to make sure that the credit score was high enough. We ran it through the desktop underwriting system, and they were approved. Um, and then again, the other thing is the person and what they want to qualify for. That person may want to qualify for a $400,000 or $500,000 house, but on paper we can only qualify them for three. It's $100,000, $200,000 difference. So each situation is different. Um, it just all depends on your lender's level of expertise, and also depends on you. If you cash trap, you don't have any money into the deal, you're riskier. If you can pay three times the amount of rent but don't have any money, that's only one factor. Like the other two factors are score, DTI, and assets. Those are the big three: credit score, debt to income ratio, and assets. You need to be strong in two to compensate for the one that you lack in, and you'll get approved. Uh, Miss Jones, you gonna Airbnb that 10 out when you're not in there? Don't do that. There is still hope. Just gotta figure out how to do it. It's still opportunities. I know you said it's hard. It's not as easy just to pick up and move. Um, I did though, right? I tell you my story. I left my hometown where I was a realtor. I took my wife. I took my family. I was not a lender. I knew nobody in Georgia. My wife didn't have a job, and I didn't have a job, and we moved to Georgia for better opportunity, better school district for my kids. My parents passed away. I brought my grandmother with me, and my purpose of doing it was so my kids could be closer to their grandparents who didn't travel. So to say, and I was 37, I had been in my hometown my entire life, and I picked up and I moved. So when I tell you just to move, I did it. I'm not telling you nothing that I didn't do. I had no job when I came to Georgia. I wasn't sure if I was going to be a lender or a realtor, right? Caveat, I did have business going on in Delaware that was able to sustain me. When my wife got here, the goal was to get my kids situated in preschool and daycare, because they were little kids, 4 years old and 10 months, to get my wife a job. She got a job within 2 weeks. And then for me to get my grandma situated with her doctors, because she was wheelchair bound and she lived with me, to get her doctors, to get everything, get her medications and everything. And then I took care of me last. It was a struggle, but now we're here. So when I tell somebody to move and it's not that easy, I did it. I left. I left. So I'm not telling you nothing that I hadn't done. Sounds like it's the Georgia dream called Hometown Heroes in Florida. You know what? Florida, I didn't know you were in Florida. Florida did just come out with a program that they increased the amount to up to $35,000 that you could potentially get. I have not used that program yet. I can do Florida. If you want to reach out to me, my information will be below. Um, if you want to reach out to me below, we can average. We can take a look at it. Each state has a different program. Each state is offering different things to people. Um, they're offering different things to people, incentivizing people. Right now, Florida is on top of the list for people moving out. People are leaving Florida and California left and right. So they're trying to incentivize people to stay in Florida so they don't lose those tax dollars. Miss Nubian G, I'm originally from the first state, the great state of Delaware. Thank you. Thank you. Yep, great state of Delaware. That's where I'm from. I spoke with a lender who said I'd be better off leaving my husband off the application because his credit scores and because he's on disability. Can I still use his income? No, you would have to. In order to use his income, it would have to either be coming into your name or he has to be on the loan. Did the other thing is what I'm not telling you to put it in the chat, but this is what I'm asking. What was your husband's credit score and why is his score where it is? Because it may be advantageous to take some time to build him up so he can be on. If he gets disability, he may not make a lot, but if he doesn't have a lot of debt, that could be beneficial to you and your family. But my question is why? Whenever I look at a credit score and there's something wrong, how and why? Why is it like this and how do we get it up? Again, guys, if you are just joining the live or listening to my replay, do me a huge favor. Comment below if you have questions and give me a thumbs up and let me know that you've enjoyed this. I am going to take one more question if someone has one, and then I'm going to have to skedaddle. Do me a favor. I got a request. If you could do me a huge favor, and if you go on the YouTube, if you're in the group, if you're in the Facebook group, send a comment a topic that you want to hear about. Also, if you're not in the Facebook group, if you join the Facebook group, the link will be below. Join the Facebook group. We're going to live up the group. What I want to build is a community, a home ownership community, where we talk about things. I may go live in that group, special giveaway, theme days. Definitely want to make sure that I provide valuable information. Also below will be a link for a home buyer's guide. The home buyer's guide will walk you through A through Z to get you through the process. It's the link below. You put in your name and email. The home buyer's guide gets automatically emailed to you and you can download it. And what that does is also puts you on the newsletter where we'll start notifying you when we're going live, different topics, and sending out different information. We'll also try to reward people in terms of celebrating them. Hey, the Joneses just purchased, highlighting people. So I definitely would love to have you in my Facebook group and in my newsletter. Again, if you're just joining the live, I would thank you. I thank you guys for jumping on. I don't take it lightly that you spent time with me. Thank you to everybody who asked questions. Hopefully I answered your question the way that you need it to be. I don't want to fill it with any fluff. There are situations where you're buying a house and it's a little bit more to it than meets the eye. And again, thank you. God bless and good night.